You're listening to the Woman Who Chat podcast with me, your host, Sandra Garlick. A podcast where I chat to women in business who share their knowledge and top tips, especially for you. I also share my own tips to help you gain visibility fast so that you appear to be everywhere, even when you're not. I'm delighted to bring this podcast to you each week to inspire and motivate you to achieve. Enjoy the podcast. Woman Who Chat is sponsored by Grow Radio. Grow Radio is an online radio station dedicated to bringing you a different podcast on the hour, every hour. I'm proud that Woman Who Chat is played on Grow Radio every Tuesday at 3 p.m. and Friday at 8 a.m. and to be a part of their podcasting community. If you want to listen to the station, explore their shows, check out many of the blogs to improve your podcasting skills, or get your podcast onto Grow Radio, head over to growradio.uk today. Welcome to Woman Who Chat, and today I'm talking to you all about what makes a great event. So you've just got me today, and it's all part of our sales and marketing theme, which is this month's topic. So what makes a great event? I've been hosting events for years, absolutely years, even before Woman Who. I used to host events for different companies I worked for, and I used to love the buzz. I think it was when I was a child, I loved birthday parties, especially my own. I used to love all the sending the invitations, getting the responses back, planning the day, planning what we were going to have to eat, planning the games, planning what was going in the past the parcel, everything. And I think that's just sort of transposed into my later life, where I just get a huge buzz out of organising them. And one of the reasons I started organising my own events, I think, was because I couldn't find events that I enjoyed from start to finish. And that's not saying that other events aren't great. It was just that I wanted to create something that wasn't there already. Over time, people have caught up, and there are some fantastic events out there now. So I've been to a number of events recently as I'm getting back out into the networking world, and I've chosen not to attend some as well. And it's a matter of personal choice, really, as to what you enjoy, what you get the most from. And I will actually now travel to events as well. So I'll think nothing of travelling up north to an event. That sounds awful, doesn't it, travelling up north? But travelling down to London as well. So I'm based in the Midlands, which is really handy for getting to various events. But as long as I can get a train there, or as long as I can get there and back, I've got a story about that as well, because I've got an electric car. But as long, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But yeah, it's personal choice and what suits you. But I've actually found that getting out and traveling a little bit further has enabled me to meet people that I wouldn't normally have engaged with. And I've widened my network as a result, which is great for growing my business, which is what I'm doing at the moment. So I thought I'd share what is good and what is bad about an event, or let's say not so great. Bad is an awful word, really. So what's not so great? Well, parking and travel is key for me, and I'll tell you my little story. I have invested in an electric car, doing my bit for the environment and being more sustainable, and it actually has saved me quite a lot of money on fuel, because I can now charge up. I've got a charger at home. I've got an EV tariff at home, which means that I can charge up relatively cheaply. But I only have a certain driving range, and my tank, when it's full, will do 160 miles. But if I go on a motorway, that jumps right down. If it's raining, it goes down even further, because I'm using my lights and my windscreen wiper and probably the heater. In the winter, it goes down to about 130. So my range isn't great, which means if I'm traveling to an event now, I have to factor in time to charge my vehicle. It's great if I'm staying overnight and the venue has got a charger, but that's very rare. Usually they're in supermarkets or on motorways or in obscure places where you wouldn't want to leave your car anyway. So I'm navigating that right now, but I still stand by the decision to get the electric car. It's just that there's a little bit more planning involved now and probably a little bit more time. But what I do now is when I do stop to charge at motorway service stations or whatever, I actually do my social media or something like that. So I do factor in time and I do make use of that time. So travel is an issue. If it's by train, that's fantastic. If I can just walk from the station, even better. Taxi rides, not so great, but I'll do them. It's not a big issue for me if I really want to go to the event. If I'm going to an event and it says that it's at a hotel or whatever, and I've got to drive and I can't get the train, parking is critical for me. It's crucial. It's one thing that when I'm doing my events, I always make sure that there is adequate free parking. There's nothing worse going to an event and then finding out it's got limited parking options, and then literally curb crawling, looking for places to park, looking for car parks in unfamiliar territories, and it just makes it stressful. So that's one thing. If you're planning an event, I think, parking and travel has to be up there with one of the main features, along with the venue, obviously. And that brings me on to venues. Venues can look ugly from the outside. Mine don't, fortunately, but there are some ugly venues out there and they don't look so great, but inside they can be fantastic. And the people that run them are fantastic. So don't be put off by an ugly exterior, is what I'm saying. It's a bit like people, isn't it? You don't judge people by what they look like. You judge what they are, their personality and what's inside. And that's the same with a venue. Don't judge it by the outside cover, because it's inside some of these venues, they are fantastic. And the staff can be so, so helpful. Hospitality has really suffered a big knock following the pandemic. And, the people that work in hospitality, some of them have had to move around, some of them lost their jobs. People have, a real passion for what they're doing, and we can make their jobs so much easier by supporting them. And I love my venue hosts, and I build great relationships with them. If you're holding an event during the daytime, people probably want daylight. I've been to quite a few events where there are no windows, and in the day that can be quite distorting. You come outside for a break at lunchtime and suddenly you're hit with this bright light, and then you go back inside and it's dark again, and that can be quite disconcerting. And I think, if you can get a room during the day with daylight, it will be so much better for your delegates or attendees. At night, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares because it's dark outside anywhere. The other thing is temperature, room temperature, and that's another biggie for me. So often rooms can be too hot. My awards was a classic example this year in the Marquee. The one day I think we had sunshine in the UK this year when I was around, and it was not overly hot, but it was hot in the Marquee, even though we had the doors open, and I didn't want them to use the great big fans because they're so noisy. So yes, it was warm in there, and we did have to factor that in, but hopefully it didn't deter people from attending, and it didn't make it a totally unpleasant experience. But I've got a plan for next year to make sure that we don't have that heat again. It'll probably rain, knowing my luck, but hey, it rains every day anyway, so what have we got to worry about? The other thing is thinking about, is it a business event? Is it a corporate event? Or is it more casual, more relaxed? Is it a social event? Is it a charity event? Is it black tie? I once went to an event and I couldn't get hold of the invitation. I'd been invited by somebody else and took along a group of people. And I specifically asked the organizer, what is the dress code? And I was told black tie. Well, if you're told it's black tie for an event, you usually imagine that for women, it's long dresses or cocktail dresses, but it's generally dress up, sparkly, you dress up slightly more than you would for going to the local pub. When we got there, it was smart casual, and there wasn't a black tie in sight except for everybody on our table. It was the most uncomfortable experience because we were so overdressed. We stood out like a sore thumb. And not only that, it was so cold in the venue. We hadn't taken coats. It was so cold in the venue because everybody was just casually dressed with jackets and jeans and things. So they were fine. We were shivering and left straight after the meal. So do think about, if you're organising your own event, then let your delegates know what the dress code is. But if you go into an event, try and find out and get something more substantial than just somebody's say-so. Actually ask to see the event flyer or invitation, so you avoid that. I'm briefly interrupting this podcast to announce that the Woman Who Achieves Solopreneur Awards 2024 are open for entry. The awards take place at the beautiful Hogarth's Hotel in Solihull on Thursday, the 3rd of October. A solopreneur is a woman in business who works on her own as a sole trader or sole director. All the information you need to enter is on the Woman Who website. Celebrate your achievements and enter the Woman Who Achieves Solopreneur Awards today at womanwho.co.uk/awards. Now back to the podcast. Now, I've made no secret of the fact that I'm partially deaf. And so events are a nightmare for me, especially dinners and things with music, because I can't hear conversation that's going on, because wearing hearing aids, it just amplifies everything. And even though I can get expensive hearing aids where you can block out certain sounds, it still doesn't do the trick effectively. So I always try and position myself away from a speaker. I try and position myself so I can see what's going on. If I can at an event, I try and position myself fairly near the front. It doesn't look as if I'm overeager and too keen. It's just that I need to be able to see the lips move of the people that are speaking. But just bear that in mind. You might have people with hidden disabilities. And if you're organising an event, it's good to find that out in advance. And this year, for my awards in the summer, I had an accessibility ramp. And it was lovely to see one of the ladies who attended being able to actually physically get her wheelchair up on the stage. It was lovely, and I thought that was fantastic. And I will always have an accessibility ramp at that event going forward. When I get to an event, I like to be welcomed by somebody. I went the other day to an event and somebody greeted me at the door, asked me if I was going to the event, and then offered to walk me through to where it was. And I thought, meet and greet, that was lovely. And when we did the event with the Great Women in Business for International Women's Day, we had meet and greeters. And I think that's lovely when you're going to a venue that you've not been to before, you don't know anybody, and maybe you don't know your way. How lovely to be met at the door by somebody. So that's something I'm going to adopt, I think, for my events going forward, so that people feel welcome from the very minute they step over the threshold. Speakers at events, make sure your speakers are engaging. My speakers, I work with them to ensure that they deliver engaging content. And when I go to an event, I love to hear the speakers, but I don't want it to be all speakers. I want some chance to have a conversation as well. So it's important to build that in and build in time for networking, because sometimes that's what you're there for as well. You want the opportunity to network, to meet other people in the room. Even if it's a black tie event, you still want to be able to mix and mingle at various stages. People tend to get up in between courses, and I enjoy that. And I think, it's good to facilitate that. So if you've got back-to-back entertainment going on, it's just too much. And you feel as if you haven't got time to breathe. And you also feel as if you're stuck to your seat. So I'm planning my events for, obviously, October for the Solopreneur Awards and for the Woman Who Achieves Awards 2025, which is the 10th anniversary of the awards. And I'm planning in lots of space, lots of gaps, lots of time for people to just simply have those conversations, which is what the Great Women in Business on the International Women's Day is all about as well. I always, before I go to an event, a great event for me is one where I've set myself some objectives before I go. Now, my standard objective before I go to any event is I need to meet 3 new people. I need to have conversations with 3 new people. And that's a little goal I set myself years ago when I was going to networking events and seeing people clustered together in cliques of people they knew and they didn't speak to anybody else. Yes, it's great when you arrive to say hello to everyone you know. It's great to greet people. It's great to have that first point of contact as somebody you know, a familiar face. But I also make a point of speaking to at least 3 people that I don't know in the room. Those conversations can be absolutely amazing. You can find out things about people that you don't usually know. So I usually go and sit away from people that I know, if I can, if it's not a seated, named table plan. So if it's free seating, I will sit by people I don't know deliberately so I can have those conversations. I think about why I'm going in advance. What's the purpose of me attending? It's, you can go to a networking event, for example, just for the sake of it, just to be there. Whereas I'm now more strategic. It's part of my visibility strategy, which sits into my marketing strategy. So I'm all about having a purpose behind going to an event or being involved in an event. Think about who I want to speak to. If I can find out in advance who's going, then absolutely I'll make a note of who I want to speak to. And, what do I want to speak to them about? What's the purpose of me speaking to them? Because it's not just to add them to my list. It's more than that. It's about finding people to collaborate with. It's about finding new suppliers. It's about finding people I can work with, people who we've just got a common thread between us. So I try and plan in advance. What makes it a great event for me is about who I'm going to see there, what I'm going to learn. I may just attend an event simply for the learning. I went to an event recently, a few months back, and I didn't expect to know anybody in the room. I went because of the learning I was going to get and spend time working on myself. So often we work on everything else, but we fail to work on ourselves. And I'm huge on personal development and continual learning. And for me, I looked at the speakers, I looked at the topics, and I thought, yeah, I want to go and work on myself. As it was, I knew about 3 or 4 people there, which was great. But it was a good opportunity for me to speak to new people and make new connections. And I made some lovely connections that day. When I'm sort of either organising my own events or going to events, I always think what makes a great event is what people do after they leave. So whether they have whatever their intentions are, I think you need to be intentional before you go, while you're there, and also when you get home. So I make copious amounts of notes when I go to events, networking events or growth events or anything that I go to. I do make notes, and people give me their business cards and we have conversations. And sometimes I promise to send people things, so I make a note of that. But one thing, and I'll hold my hands up here, that I have been incredibly bad at over the years, which I'm getting better at and I'm learning, follow up. And if you listen to episode 89 back in December with Charlie Day of Charlie Day's Sales, her top tip, and she talked about it at length, was follow up and follow up, because people don't. And I sort of go to networking events still armed with my business cards. I still take business cards to events, or if I'm at an online event, I take my links. They're all ready to copy and paste into the chat box. My business cards still have my photograph on them because that makes me memorable. And when I get home, I look at the business cards and I try and remember who the people were. And I remember what they've asked me for. So it's quite often I will write on somebody's business cards. So if you are doing business cards, remember, part of a sales and marketing cost, you're advertising and branding to have business cards. Don't get the ones you can't write on, because some of them you just simply can't. And also pop your photograph on there. My new ones, I've got my photo and QR codes on there. So it's easy for people to find me. But I do get back and I look at the business cards, and I came back from an event recently, and out of 20 business cards, only one had a photograph on it. So I was trying to remember who the other people were. But there's one thing here I'll say: it's great to follow up, but don't bombard people. How awful is it to get that email, from somebody that was there saying, great to talk to you, and you haven't spoken to them, or worse still, you haven't been able to attend the event and they still said it was great to talk to you even though you weren't there. I used to get lots of those years ago, less now, but they're awful to receive. Cringeworthy, in fact. But I actually love to follow up with people who I say I'm going to follow up with. So it might be I've promised them to send them something, or they might have promised to send me something, or they might have invited me to speak on a podcast, or whatever it is. That's the kind of following up I'm on about. Don't just add everybody to your database. It's not ethical, it's not great, and all they'll do is unsubscribe, so it distorts your figures anyway. What I like to do is maybe connect on social, say it was great to see you, great to chat to you, let's connect if we're not connected already. And then I send them, say, is it okay to send you the info I promised you? It's a good way to connect and a good way to follow up. So yeah, following up is key. So I've talked a bit about what makes a great event and go into events as well. So when I'm building my strategy for the year, and I do this in 90-day chunks, I always have, and I'm working on the next quarter. So I'm working now on my October, November, December quarter. Now, there will be a lot of events, and there are some events I've already paid for in advance and I'm going to, and I'm really looking forward to. In fact, I've paid for events that I'm attending in 2025. I've got 3 events already in the diary. They are full day events that I've paid for in advance, and I will be in the room. So that's how far ahead people are planning for events right now. So have a look and plan ahead. So I've already planned this quarter, July, August and September, which is a really easy one because there's no events in August, although I run my own online network event on the first Monday of each month, and that there is one of those in August. But a lot of people stop their events in August. A lot of people don't hold events in December because there's too many Christmas parties, but I still go to events in December, so don't rule them out. And then just plan quarterly, in advance. What events am I going to attend? Look at them. Go to the ones you love. Don't go to the ones you don't enjoy, because you won't have a great experience. I think that is my biggest takeaway. My biggest tip for you is go to the ones you really enjoy going to, where you feel that you can walk in the room on your own and everybody is welcoming. Events where there's cliques and things like that are not so great for me. I always feel as if I'm on the outside or the cusp and everybody knows each other and I'm not part of it. So I go for events mainly where they're warm, they're welcoming, I'm going to learn something, I'm going to meet new people, and my mind is going to be expanded. Plus, easy to get to and great parking, and that I can hear what's going on, and that I'm going to be engaged and not too cold. There you go. That's my shopping list. So if you're planning an event and you want me to be in the room, then make sure you tick all those boxes, or most of them anyway. So that's all from me this week. I'll be back next week with another podcast. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Woman Who Chat podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Join me next week for more inspiration, learning and top tips. In the meantime, visit womanwho.co.uk to find out how you can start your Woman Who journey, or even feature on a future podcast. You can also join the Woman Who Achieves community on Facebook. The link is in the show notes. There, you'll get the opportunity to network, find support and make new connections with over 1,000 women in business. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's podcast. And if there are any topics you would like to hear, just get in touch with me, your host, Sandra Garlick.